What's going on, everybody? Thanks for checking the video out. Keith here, June's there, getting busy working on this Kawasaki Mule. We got it running good, but we are having a little problem at startup. Initially, the first start of the day, it fires up. You don't have to give it any gas. You choke it. As you try to restart it, shut it off, do a little bit of maintenance work, get back in it. It won't start without hitting the gas pedal. So it's irritating us, kind of pissing us off in that way. So long story short, we're going to figure out if it's getting enough spark. We adjusted the gap. The gap on this plug should be 0.28. So 20, you should gap it at 28 thousandths of an inch, which we did, and everything's good to go. The carburetor's brand new on this unit. The fuel pump's brand new. The only thing we didn't do was a coil. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean the coil off. So let's show you guys exactly what we did. We drilled out some pop rivets to get access to the coil. Alright, you guys, so here's the motor. We got the bed of the unit flipped up. It's the Kawasaki 550 Mule. And we've got another video where we got it running really good on there as well with the carburetor. So what we're going to do now is just get it running even better. So June went ahead and removed the housing here to the side of the motor. And you've got some pop rivets that you have to drill out. What was there, 3 of them? Two of them, these 2 pop rivets. And we got to finish drilling them out, but you want to drill down through. It's a little governor kind of throttle cable cover. It sits there like that. So you want to drill those out. The tops will come off. You get to this. Throw that thing to the side. Later we'll drill these all the way back out. We'll use some self-tapping screws. We're not going to go back with the pop rivets again. And we remove this cover off of here. You got a couple different bolts. Got to hold the cover on. So with a 10 mil wrench, we're going to remove this linkage. All of this governor. Was this the choke cable? No, the choke cable comes up here. So this is the whole throttle cable system. And we're going to take that off to gain easier access to the flywheel down there. And you can see the starter plugs in. The flywheel's there. We can show you really good once we get this off how rusty it is. And there's your the Magneto. There's your magnet. June cleaned it up a little bit. We're going to clean it some more, but you can see the flywheel is just nasty. So chances are that coil right there, this is the two areas that touch are going to be rusty as well. So we've got some emery cloth.
That's what's on the coil.
Yeah, we ran this up underneath the coil already. If you take the coil off, you got to re-gap it. We're going to try to avoid that right now and just run this cloth under there, put it back together, see if the spark's better. So let's get this top housing off and we can show you better if we're going to take the coil off or we're just going to go ahead and clean it as is. Alright, so June's got that whole linkage cover set up back to the side. You can see the flywheel, the starter, flywheel teeth, and on the flywheel you got the Magneto magnet. It's kind of jammed up because we got the flywheel crooked, and there's your coil right there. So it looks like 2 10mm bolts, and there's a gap in between that starter or that coil right there and this flywheel, and the flywheel's got rust, the coil's got rust under there. June was trying to put some
sandpaper,
emery cloth and sandpaper, and it would fit under there on one side after he worked it a little bit, but it's not going in on the other. So we're going to pop the coil off, and when we looked online, we went ahead and we saw that it's 0.012 thousandths of an inch. So that's what we're going to do. And I checked the specs. The gap's at 28, and it's 3mm, 0.3mm, or 0.1 or 0.12, and that's what my phone's saying as far as finding it out. And it breaks down everything on this motor. So we're gonna get busy. June's moving that.
I got it under there too.
The paper underneath there. Let's see if we can see it here. Which is a good temporary fix, but he's got that sandpaper up underneath that coil, and he's moving that flywheel back and forth, just getting it up under there further and further, and it will clean it. We might just take it off to make sure the backside's clean and then re-gap it. But what we're going to do, we'll clean it and then we'll check the gap to see if the gap, and you can just see, look at the rust that he's got going on there. Can't really get it out. You gotta spin out. You see all that rust under there? You see that? Look at all that rust underneath the coil. It's crazy, and that's just one side. There's another part that touches on the back side, the lower side of the coil down there. And that you're never going to get proper spark when it hits that magnet right there. That magnet, we clean that off too. We use some emery cloth and we used a wire brush. You can see where those two screws are right there. That's your magnet, and it's going past that coil. And without that running right, you're never going to get a good hot spark. You can throw as many spark plugs as you want at it. It's just not going to run right. So, and what'll happen is the spark plug will get the gas on it and actually won't be able to fire through the gas. It'll act as almost like a water, especially with this crappy ethanol gas they got now. So we're going to get busy. Take the coil up and off of there, two 10mm bolts right there, or two 8mm bolts, my bad. And then we're going to go ahead and check the connection here. Make sure this wire is good and clean. Use some dielectric grease there, as well as sand down with that emery cloth on the bottom. Clean the flywheel while we've got it. We already cleaned the magnet, but we'll go ahead and clean the rest of the flywheel just so we can get another 10-year run out of it. And hopefully this gets a better spark and starts up every single time without hitting the gas. All right, so we got the coil, we got the flywheel exposed, we got these feeler gauges. What we mean by gap is the thickness of these gauges. We've got these good brass gauges here, and if you read them, that'll say 0.012. So that's what we want, or it's the 305mm, 30 maybe 0.5 or something. So and if we go in there, rotate this flywheel, you can see that little magnet on there. It's got the two screws. The rest of it's just regular flywheel, this flat spot, but you can see this part right here. It's got the two screws. We clean that with a wire brush really well. And if you spin that over, you get it right underneath that coil. That's what's hitting your contact. You take this feeler gauge under there, and I can do it this sideways. It's barely fitting under there. So this thing, you want to lay this underneath there, and you tighten these two bolts. You got one bolt down here and one bolt right here. So you kind of want to, you really need two gauges. Put one here, one on the other side. We'll see if we can just flex this one across the whole bottom, tighten it up, and then pull this out. And this will be gapped right here at the 0.012. But right now it's too tight. With all that rust under there, it's probably at a 10. So let's go ahead and take these two 8mm bolts out, take this coil up off of here, and clean it as well. So we'll disconnect this wire right here, and we'll clean that connection as well. And this thing should be having all kinds of spark after we clean the flywheel. The magnet's clean, and we'll gap it correctly. All right, so we got the coil off. You can see the flywheel is real good and dirty now. And June's got that coil, and that's the part that hits that magnet. You can see where he kind of cleaned it with the sandpaper. If he would have stayed on it, he probably would have got it all. But you can see over here, it's harder to get on the downside of the motor. You'd almost have to go up from underneath. And he got it pretty clean, but we're gonna clean that up. And you can see those stripes in it. And sometimes they come with a protective coating that gets worn off over time, especially if you clean them. But we'll clean this back to normal, put everything back on, gap it right. You can see where it'll sit like that, and the gap will be right underneath here, right in between that magnet. And we've got that little plug that's hooked up to the coil. It goes right on this little connection right here. So we're gonna lightly clean that. June's got these little carburetor brush cleaning rods with brushes on them, and the one's like almost like a guitar string. It's kind of got ridges on it, and it's just sanding it out, sanding it clean. You can see the dirt just falling out the bottom of it. That could be part of the problem as well. So he's got that down in there, just cleaning up that little flat connection. And then we've got some CR3C throttle body air intake cleaner. We don't have any electrical cleaner by CRC. Basically you spray it on and do the same thing. It won't hurt anything. And let's go ahead and spray down in there as well. You ready? I don't have the tube on. Let me get this little tiny tube on here. Real quick, clean that up, and get this thing put back together. All right, let's give it a little spray, clean that off. Good to go, huh? You want to poke the wire down in there now while it's wet, just to make sure we can clean everything else. If there's anything stuck in there, go ahead and get a little spray at the same time. Looks pretty clean now. It's definitely dirty before. And we're going to pinch that shut a little bit just with the needle nose pliers, just a little bit to give it a little bit of a better connection right here. Don't over pinch it. We just do it real lightly, and we can go ahead and clean this connection here. Put some grease on that after we clean it, and we're good to go. So let's go ahead and just file this coil down. You got some emery cloth right here. You want to use this, June, or you want the wire brush? Okay.
This gets all that crap off of it.
Yeah. Get that rust off of there. You can see how nice and shiny it is. You can really see the ridges in that metal. I'm not quite sure why they do the metal like that.
It's a bunch of different layers.
Yeah, it's a bunch of layers, and it must just have some magnetic reaction that causes that dang spark. It's crazy how they think of things, but everything's for a reason. We just know how to maintenance it. And you can see just the color of it. It's just so much cleaner. And we'll go ahead and spray this with that the cleaner that we have, the electrical connection or throttle body cleaner. Get all that little fine dust and grit off of it. Hit it with the wire brush too. Hit it with a little, try to get down in those grooves. And the drill around here. Let's just see if we can get it out of there. Good. Let's hit it with a little spray and then hit it with that brush. Watch your eyes there. Yeah, it's like brand new. Look at that difference. Big, huge difference. So now we can just go ahead. We'll go ahead and clean most of the rust off that dang flywheel just so it doesn't zing back around, and scrape up on these, and we'll get a lot of life out of it. So we'll wire brush that. Make sure you wire brush that. We'll get the coil back on, show you how to set the gap.
Magnet, we're gonna hit that real good.
Yeah, with this magnet too, if we can get down in here. Spin this back right there. So let's hit a little bit right there. Some spray. Hit it with that brush. Get as much as we can, and we'll take that emery cloth back to it. All right, everything's clean, flywheel's clean. You can see it right there, and let's just blow off that magnet and just get all the dust out of here. Good. Here you go, June. So let's go ahead and get this coil mounted back on there, and we got the connection clean. Where's that coil? And we went ahead, and you can see how clean the coil is there in the shine of the light outside. And I went ahead and I cleaned the sides with the wire brush, cleaned in there. Make sure you don't file this down too much, because you don't have much room for gap. I mean, you got enough, but it's not like these are ovaled out to raise and lower too high. So I went ahead and toothbrushed it too, got some of the dirt off, and I went ahead and I emery clothed this connection where that wire is. That's going to go back over, and so you want to make sure that that's all clean. And we're going to put some dielectric grease on there. We got this, what is this, Loctite stuff. We're getting low. You can see our tube has been smashed and used more times than it should have been. have to call Advanced Auto and get another tube of it. If you don't have this, you can just use some Vaseline or something, Neosporin, same thing. And let's just go ahead and grease up that connection right there. And this thing's ready to install, so we can go ahead and show you how to install it and gap it right now. All right, we're gonna get this coil back on here. And June's not gonna tighten it all the way down, he's just gonna snug the bolts. That way we can get underneath there with the feeler gauge in between that coil connections and that magnet on the Magneto there on the flywheel. So get that installed and try to get a good close-up on it where I can show you guys how to use that gapping tool. We can show you how to use it. It's just feeding everything back through. So let's get this thing on there. 2 bolts, you need 1 more bolt. Yeah, it's hard to see on this thing. I'll tell you what, you got this flywheel covers in the way there. I don't even know if you can see it. You go outside here real fast. I could probably lean over and show you guys here. Right there's the coil. So he's just snugging that thing up right now.
Yeah, just get it where you can move it.
Yeah, getting it tight, but enough where we can move it to get that feeler gauge underneath there. Let me get out of the light here.
Number 12.
Yeah, this says number 12 on it, or 0.012. So that's the gauge that we want. You want to move the magnet over there as well and gap it off of that.
Oh, yeah. Good thing you're here.
Let's move that magnet right underneath of it. There you go. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I think in the manual it says 12. It's probably 12 to 14, something like that. They give you a little bit of leeway. He's got try to get that feeler gauge under there. All right, what we'll do is because the magnet's too short to get to both of the connections on the coil, we're gonna gap the one side. And then slightly tighten that up. See that little gap right there where the tip of that screwdriver is. You can see the screwdriver sticking to that magnet. Right there is where you want that 12 thousandths. How she feel, June? Leave the screwdriver there when you tighten it?
No, that's good.
Okay, pull the screwdriver out. You can see it right there. That feeler gauge is right underneath that gap of in between the flywheel magnet and that coil. So he's got that 8mm. We're just going to tighten this thing back down, lock it in, leaving the gauge underneath there.
I just snugged it a little bit.
Yeah.
This other side now.
He just snugged it down. He didn't tighten it all the way, just so we can raise up the other side now. We're going to move the magnet down towards the lower part of the coil.
Don't make it easy.
Yeah, and then he's going to get that gauge. Almost like I said, you go from underneath. Whoop. So he's got that gauge in, he's leaving it under there while he snugs that next bolt down right there. And what we'll do is we'll double check them. We'll slide that feeler gauge underneath there, make sure that they're still sliding underneath there correctly. And we know our gap's set. And there's no more rust, so they should get a lot of years out of this thing, even if they leave it outside. Yep. So the gauge is sliding up underneath that bottom side of the coil, good. What about the top? Pretty good?
Pretty good.
Yeah, it's good. So now we can go ahead and tighten both bolts down all the way down to specs. We're using a little 1/4" drive, 1/4" ratchet, that way you don't over tighten anything and blow it out of there. You don't want to strip it and break the head off the bolt, so we're good. Let's go ahead and get this cover back on, get these throttle controls mounted back to the top. And don't forget, we got to drill out those the last remaining part of the pop rivet and either re-pop rivet it back in, or we'll use some self-tapper screws. How's she look? Good? Pretty good. So June's doing one last double check on it. The top and the bottom one. Look good? Yep. All right, sweet. So the gap is there. Both points of the coil on the magnet. Just rotate the flywheel, get that magnet underneath the part of the coil where we showed you we emery clothed it, and then slide it over and gap it 12.012, and we're going to put this back together and see if we get a better result on our first start and second to 100 starts of the day. It should start up without hitting that gas pedal. All right, we're actually going to finish drilling these pop rivets out right now. We're going to drill through them and the bottom should fall out. We got a rag over top that flywheel and the magnet. If not all these metal filings, if any, well, these are aluminum pop rivets, but if anything comes, it's going to stick to the magnet, so make sure you cover it up. Almost. See it. You get to it. Now we'll clean that off. We'll use that high-powered air, blow everything back off, and get some self-tapper screws in there. If you want, you can use pop rivets again. I think we're going to go with some self-tapping screws. That way this thing can be taken off later, and we can maintenance this coil when they bring it back for any repairs or maintenance. It'll make our life a lot easier. So let's put this thing together, clean it up, put it back together, and see how she runs. All right, guys, so for the moment of truth, got the coil all cleaned up, everything's buttoned back up. You can see down in there, we put a couple of these self-tapping screws right there on both sides here. So let's start it and see if it starts without any choke. All right, guys, so for the moment of truth, let's see if it starts on its own. Sweet, that's with no choke. So we cleaned the coil out. We showed you guys how to do that. Clean the magnet on the flywheel, clean the flywheel. Turn the idle up just a little bit on it. And good to go, man. This thing's been driving me crazy. It runs great. I put a new carburetor on it, and I had it running good with that, but the customer just wanted a brand new carb, so we threw that on there. I threw a new fuel pump at it. And it runs great around the yard. The problem is on the very first start, after we started the first time with the very first start, it just didn't sound right. And we were chewing into that starter to try to get it to start unless we gave it full throttle. All right, guys, so the Mule is starting. And I like it. It's starting up a lot easier. And June went home for the evening. I took that dang spark plug out and I put some of this Super Tech from Walmart. This motor treatment is good for gas and diesel. It'll stabilize it and kind of smooth everything out. You can use it in the crankcase, the gas tank, or I poured a little bit also in the oil. But I poured a good cup, about a half cup's worth down in that cylinder where the spark plug goes. And then I took the flywheel cover off and I spun it around a little bit, just kind of getting that the juices in there before you get too much compressing, because then it'll shoot it out and blow it out and burn it in the exhaust. So I did that a little bit. And then I started it up and it smoked. It smoked a lot, but it ate up the corrosion in the cylinder. Sometimes those piston rings can get stuck in there and you want them to kind of bounce out. As you'll run a compression test, it might be a 28, 32 PSI, 28 to 32. And in the books it says it should have a ton more, but the unit runs fine. So I can't really understand it. I just get crafty with it and think about how things are doing when they're neglected by the customer, or if they got it used. In this circumstance, this unit was bought used, barely ridden at all. He always had problems with it, and he parked it, and it was used as a recycling bin in the back for his beer bottles and stuff. So let's go ahead and zing this thing around the yard and see how it does. I poured a little bit more of that, the Super Tech. And this is one of my secrets, this motor treatment. And I poured a little bit of that in the oil. And I put a little bit of that down in the cylinder before I started it. And let's see, and then I poured about a half can in the gas tank. So let's run this thing around. Just run it like you stole it. You really want to clear it out of there. You want that to penetrate in there. And sometimes you got to ride things a little hard just to clean them out, clean that carbon that's sat in there. And my goats are looking at me like, what up? He knows what's up. Running pretty good. These things top out about, 20 some odd mile an hour. They're supposed to run at probably 3,500 RPMs all the time. That's the best, well, not all the time, but that's the best operating condition for them. They're either at idle or they're on the go. You can hear it, it's maxed. My foot's all the way down on this thing. And that's all she's got. We got a Polaris that'll eat this thing up. But that's what this thing's made for, just maintenance. It's not made for the maintenance guys to go around and get into accidents. It's made just to idle, run to the next spot, put some trash in the back, spread some mulch, sprays for some weeds, go around the county fair, and clean up. So let's gun it again and just clean this thing out, try to keep it pinned as long as we can to clean that cylinder out of there. I'm gonna end up flipping this thing over, but it's running better and better. So what we'll do is we'll come up here to a flat ground here. Listen to the idle for a second. The idle's coming down on its own, and how I can tell, I always can tell on the way shift. If you bring this thing out and it's super clunky, this one's a little clunky, so the idle's a little high. Normally it should go in nice and smooth. I'm gonna keep the idle up high on this one just for now until we really clean it out. So let's go ahead and turn it off one time and see if she starts. And I'm just gonna finish the video out. Key 2 Guys How To. Check out the other videos, and hopefully there's something on there that can help you guys get your stuff running. If you got questions or comments, hit us up. We're always answering questions, and if we haven't fixed it yet, that doesn't mean we're not going to. Or we haven't, I just didn't film it because I got so much stuff. It takes me a long time to film everything, edit everything, and I'm just tired. So that's it. I'm out. Let's see if she starts again. Just firing up. So this is the key, man. We had chased our tails. I did the valves. I checked the valves, did the compression. We did clean the coil. But you know what? This down in the cylinder, this just ate that crap right out of there. And I poured a little bit down where the oil goes. The oil stick, the oil's brand new. And I'm gonna let it eat that corrosion out. Blow it out of there. It's not smoking anymore. I don't see any smoke coming out. But it was earlier. When I was riding it, there was a puff of smoke, not real big, but a little bit coming out of the back. Looked like I was riding a 2-cycle four-wheeler or something. So I'm happy, I'm out. I'm going to fix the next thing, work on this other four-wheeler, and change the needle clip in there and keep it moving. Fix it yourself, save that money. Peace.